All right, today we're going to peel back the layers of history, and I mean that literally, to figure out what women in the 15th century really wore. Okay, so first things first, if you're picturing medieval fashion from the movies, either those floaty fantasy princess gowns or, on the other end, just drab burlap sacks, well, you're gonna want to stick around. Because the reality, it was so much more interesting, way more structured, and honestly, a lot more complex. Just look at this portrait. Right away, you can see this incredible structure and all this vibrant color. This isn't some fantasy movie costume. Nope, this is the real deal. It really captures the essence of the time, which is that fashion wasn't just about clothes. It was a full-on statement about your identity, your status, your place in the world, all of it wrapped up in layers of wool and linen. And to really get a handle on the clothes, you first have to understand the body shape they were trying to create. And in the Burgundian region, say from about 1450 to 1470, there was one single silhouette that was everything: the pear shape. Yep, you heard that right. The pear shape was the ideal. Everything was engineered to get this look. You've got this super high waistline that makes the legs look longer and skirts that were actually cut to show off a rounded belly. It's pretty much the exact opposite of a lot of our modern beauty standards, right? The bust was flattened and a visible tummy was actually a desirable, prominent feature. So the big question is, how did they actually build this silhouette? Well, like any good building project, it all starts with a foundation. So let's do it. Let's build an authentic 15th century outfit, from the inside out, layer by layer. Okay, layer number one, right up against the skin, the shift. You might also hear it called a camise. And listen, this part was absolutely non-negotiable. It was always made of linen. This had nothing to do with style, it was all about hygiene. Think about it. Your outer clothes, made of wool, were super expensive and a real pain to clean. So this linen shift, it was there to soak up all the sweat and oils and protect those valuable outer layers. And this picture gives you a perfect idea of what we're talking about. See how simple and functional it is? It usually came down to about mid-calf. I mean, any longer and it would just drag in the mud and get disgusting. And this was it. This was pretty much the only piece of clothing a woman would wash regularly. Everything else was just built right on top of this super practical protective layer. All right, so on top of that linen shift, we add the kirtle. And you really need to think of the kirtle as the absolute heart of the wardrobe. This was the main dress, the structural powerhouse, worn by basically everyone, whether you were a camp follower or a rich merchant's wife. And this is so cool because it shows you the link between the art and the actual engineering. On the left, that's the finished product, right out of a famous painting. But on the right, that's how they did it. That perfect, smooth, flawless fit. It wasn't magic. It was the result of some seriously sophisticated tailoring and pattern making. So let's break down what made a kirtle a kirtle. First, it was always wool. The top part, the bodice, was made from 4 pieces, cut just so to get that super tight fit, and get this, with no modern darts. Then you have this massive skirt. We're talking like 4 meters of fabric to get that full pear shape. And it was all attached at that really high signature waistline. And here's one of my favorite details. The sleeves were often completely separate. They were literally just pinned on. How smart is that? It's totally modular. You could have a set of tough sleeves for work, some fancy ones for special occasions, or warmer ones for winter, and you'd just swap them out. And they were almost always a different color than the dress itself, which just looks so cool and dynamic. Okay, but all this beautiful wool and expert tailoring, it wasn't cheap, not by a long shot. To really get a sense of how valuable these clothes were, we have to talk about money. And it all kind of boils down to one number: 10. 10 days' wages. That's what the wool for a single kirtle would cost a skilled worker. 10 full days of work. Just think about that. It meant a woman might only get a totally new dress once every 4, maybe 5 years. These clothes were a huge investment. They were taken care of, mended constantly, and passed down and altered. This was the absolute opposite of fast fashion. This was forever fashion. So if pretty much everyone wore a kirtle, how did you show off your wealth? How did you signal your status? Well, that's where the next layers come in. And this really lays it out. On one hand, you've got a camp follower. Her whole wardrobe might just be one practical kirtle. It's functional, sure, but it's probably darned and patched from all the hard work. But then you look at an officer's wife. She could really show off her husband's success. She'd be wearing a gorgeous overgown on top of her kirtle, maybe even lined with fur. And the colors. Deep, rich, expensive colors that took a ton of work and pricey imported dyes to create. Your clothes literally broadcast your social standing to everyone you met. Okay, last but not least, let's get into the details, the little things that separate a truly authentic recreation from just a Halloween costume. Because believe me, there were some very strict, absolutely unbreakable rules for getting dressed. And rule number one, well, it's arguably the single most important social signal of them all, a crystal clear sign of a woman's status. If you were a married or adult woman, you did not show your hair in public. Period. It was always covered up, usually with these beautiful layers of fine white linen veils or scarves. Going out with your hair down, that was a huge, huge social no-no. Okay, here's another big one, especially if you're into historical accuracy. You know how in movies you always see that crisscross shoelace lacing on the front of dresses? Yeah, that's wrong. All the evidence we have from paintings and drawings points to spiral lacing. It's just one single lace going back and forth, which creates a much cleaner, flatter line. And this one's a shocker for a lot of people. You'd think, okay, maybe they wore linen dresses in the summer to stay cool, right? Nope. Outer dresses, kirtles, gowns, you name it, were always made of wool. Always. Linen just doesn't hold dye very well, and you can't tailor it into those complex shapes. Wool, though, wool is kind of a miracle fabric. It's a great insulator, which means it keeps you warm when it's cold, but it also helps keep you cool when it's hot. Plus, you could tailor it to fit like a glove. So let's run through the whole process one more time. How do you get dressed in 1470? First, you start with that linen shift. Then, you put on your woolen kirtle. After that, you pin on your sleeves. If you need another layer, you throw on an overdress or a gown. And finally, you are absolutely not ready to leave the house until your hair is covered and you've got a belt. So you see, every single item, from the quality of the wool to the color of the dye, it told a story. It told people about your money, your job, whether you were married, your whole identity. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? If your clothes today told that kind of detailed story, what exactly would they be saying about you?